my discipline for many years was to my grief. My discipline for many years was to my own self-criticism. That's a hard place to have discipline in. I don't consider it something that, if one finds discipline more of a challenge, I don't think that you have it harder than one who has, say, easy discipline. You just have a different path to find what works for you.
I'm Olivia Clementine, and this is Love and Liberation. Today, our guest is Brea Fisher. Brea, otherwise known as Kuan Yin Kung Fu, is a dedicated practitioner and teacher of qigong, taiji, and gongfu. Drawing on her focused study and knowledge of Taoist philosophy and lifestyle, traditional Chinese medicine, yin-yang theory, and five-element theory, Brea carries the eagle claw turning style lineage, teaching forms handed down to her by gongfu master Xing Shui. Within each movement exists a transmission of internal messages between the body, the mind, and the spirit. As an artist, Brea unites the visual arts with the Chinese martial and internal arts. Her everyday gongfu films have been shared faithfully as part of an online documentation of a daily practice project. She combines landscape photography with qi cultivating movement. Brea is a student of and advocate for the natural world. Based in northern New Mexico, Brea offers weekly classes, tea ceremony, workshops, intensive study immersions, and private lessons. She shares her work with practitioners around the globe, both in person as well as in the digital practice space. Thank you so much for being here. I would love to begin just by grounding us into your background in your work and just how you came onto the path.
I just want to say again, thank you for having me here. I am just feeling very grateful in this moment to be here with you, and just to connect in this way too. I'm feeling the waves of qi going out to all those who will be listening and are listening right now in this moment. And so my path that has brought me to this place has been one that, in a way, I felt coming my entire life, but didn't know it. I grew up in the Midwest and didn't really have access to the part of martial arts that I work with now, which is really different from what I think in the West, at least up until about maybe 5 years ago, very recently, people consider martial arts, which is often thought of as self-defense, or something violent. And it's really, depending on how you approach it, certainly there are different ways, it's really about coming to yourself and meeting yourself with that warrior spirit. And so for me, that's the part that really was easy to tap into once I realized that that was what breathes martial arts. But as a child, I didn't have access to that knowledge yet. And as I grew up and started digging into myself and taking on that work of looking at how I respond to the world and why, I came across, I thought I wanted to practice Tai Chi, and Tai Chi to me was an easier access point into the whole world that was unknown to me at the time. And so I just really just stumbled upon my teacher, my sifu, and I went to the acupuncture school in the city where I lived, which is Denver, and met Master Sing Shui and just felt immediately a connection, a reverence that normally takes time to develop. And just he is a very humble man and so wise, and has been doing this his whole life since he was just a young child. And he doesn't have much English, so he taught the class and I enjoyed it. And it was Tai Chi. And after class, I came to thank him, and he had his, my elder Kung Fu brother standing beside him to help him communicate better with me. And I was just really excited, and I'm going to come back. And my Sifu said to Sam, tell her about Sunday. Tell her she needs to come to Sunday class. And so Sunday was our main all-day practice in the park. And so I arrived that first Sunday. I had ridden my bike 12 miles to get there. And it wasn't 12 miles, but it was far. And I got there and I said, okay, I'm ready. Is it going to be the same form? What is it? And Sam said, no, well, this is the Kung Fu class. And my eyes got really wide. And I said, oh, no, not for me. I really know Kung Fu that's the martial art. And I'm not athletic, and I don't need that. And he said, well, just try it. And I did. I followed along, and I loved it. And so I really would not have come to it had I known, had I wouldn't have come to it unless it had come to me. And then that just led me down the whole path, and the path inward. And here I am now.
Would you share about the 3 modalities?
Yes. For me, and what my Sifu always said, is that they're all the same. They're all one. And you can practice, certainly, especially in this day and age, you can practice one and not the others. You can do that. However, you won't, it will be harder for you to access the full scope of the practice. And it's because they're all the same thing. It's just like touching the surface if you just have one. And for me, I began with the Kung Fu. And the Kung Fu was what led me deeper in the Tai Chi. And the Tai Chi led me to the qigong. And so Kung Fu really translates to putting in the hard work it takes to master one's art. And one's art, as we know, can be anything in this world. It can be raising a child. It can be baking something. It can be painting. It can be writing, singing, dancing, all those things. It can be building a houses. It can be planting trees. And so if you can put in those very dedicated amounts of time and energy, that's your gongfu. And so I just find that really beautiful and freeing, because it takes it out of the realm of chops to the neck and strikes to the kidney. But certainly Kung Fu is that. Also, it is martial. It was developed in China many years ago, and China's had a pretty volatile past, pretty violent past, and so certainly these practices were developed on the basis of practicality, which is part of the thing I love so much about the Chinese culture and the Chinese practices. Uh, it's all backed up by practicality. There's always a reason to do it, and then behind that is the spiritual meaning. And so you go behind the gongfu, and you find, as you slow down and you bring the focus inside, you find that every one of those martial movements has a spiritual meaning. And then you bring it more into the taiji and slow it down and find that spiritual meaning. And then you take it even deeper and you bring it back into the body, and you allow the movements to find their correspondences with the heart, with the lungs, with the throat, with the skin, with the liver. And these movements are touching on those organs and those body parts and speaking to them. And as you move your body certain ways, the insides of your body respond. And there's a dialogue happening. And the more you can listen in to that dialogue and allow space for that dialogue to happen, the more you offer yourself a space to get to know who you are beyond this form.
It reminds me, I actually wrote this little line that you, beautiful line that you wrote. Our emotions become our teachers the way the sun and the rain, the wind and thunder are masters of change and grace in the physical world. And I love that. And that what you're sharing right now of these pathways helping us understand who we are beyond the physical, just reminds me of our emotional realm, right? And kind of this balance between knowing how we feel and then also not being servants to our emotions at the same time, knowing we're something greater than that. I feel like you speak about that in some of your sharings I've seen.
I do. I'm really pleased that you brought this up so quickly, because it is one of the paramount teachings for me, this practice, and what I feel is one of the most gifts, the most giving aspects.
Really brings it into the modern world, practicality that you're speaking of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the modern world is one, at least in this culture, the Western culture, it's to be an emotional person tends not to have the best emotional people are seen as unstable. However, you wouldn't be a human if you didn't have emotions. And for me personally, I've always been emotional as a child, growing up, and here now as an adult. It was only when I allowed myself to feel my emotions deeply, to allow them to be expressed in whatever way they needed to, it was only then that I was able to smooth out. So I don't think people would say I'm a very emotional person anymore. And it's because I feel my emotions deeply. And I acknowledge them and I respect them. I honor them for their messages. And I don't immediately close the door in their face and say, no, that's wrong. You're not supposed to get, you're not supposed to be depressed, right? You're not supposed to wail. You're not supposed to be angry, for sure not, especially as a woman. No. And, it's easier to say that about the emotions that are on the shadow side. But even the emotions that come up the other side of the spectrum, the ones that are what you could call light, the joy, the excitement, even those, okay, you don't want to be manic now, right? So these the cultural ideas of basically flattening out the line within us and how we present ourselves to the world, where even when we're alone, we are not allowed to fully go there to those extremes. It's it's not natural, and when we suppress that, we create a hard place for ourselves inside the body and inside the mind and inside the heart. And so for bringing it back to the practice, um, I would say especially qigong in this regard allows one to go so deeply inside, removing the mind and listening to what comes up by way of sensation, the body's language, and not trying so hard to decipher what it means, because it is a different language and you won't know what it means right away. But we listen and we're there for it and we're present with it, allowing that space to just be with what is and see it and see what comes up from a calm place, right? Mm-hmm. From a focused, present awareness gives us an opportunity to really understand why it is we feel that way. And, that can be for all sorts of different reasons. I don't know. You would know for you. And I would say that there is a place of shutting the door on sadness right off the bat that makes it so much more powerful behind that door that it busts it down. Mm. And that's where the overindulgence comes. But I don't think that overindulging in emotions is a natural thing that you're just, oh, you got to be careful, you might do that. No, that comes because the torrent is flowing so powerfully behind your closed eyes with your hands over your face. Because you're saying, no, I'm not supposed to feel that. So certainly we don't want to allow the emotion to take control, but we can stand beside the emotion and hold its hand and say, okay, I'm listening. What is it? Right? And the qigong allows the space. It gives you that opportunity.
Yeah, I remember when I was, I think like 22 or something, and I was in retreat. In the mornings we would do qigong, and we often did the one where you hold the ball forever, the imaginary ball forever. And I remember like it was the most intense part of the retreat. Like we were sitting like 15 hours a day, and like that was like compared to holding the ball, just the amount of energy. I really love about the practices that you have such a devotion towards. I love that relationship between the stillness and the movement, and the silence and the movement, and the intensity that arises from that. And there's so much I want to talk about with you today, I guess, in terms of silence and slowness and the power of that. And it makes like just what you're sharing, that Zen koan, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. So this notion, that we don't have to do anything, right? Like so much energy is created. And I think, your practices are on the earth, often like in the elemental realm, like you actually are outside, and you do these incredible videos through social media. It's like one of the best uses I've seen of social media, where you share daily practices. People can take in the energy that you're embodying. And also people can practice themselves with you. It's so beautiful. And to me, it's just Mother Earth and is such a reflection of this efficient master of nothingness, of like so much, like phenomenal amounts are created. And yet there's this silence in a way that Mother Earth has, and this kind of doing nothing, yet the grass grows by itself. And I'm curious, like, how we can cultivate that in our life, because I think so many of us are yearning for that. Our nervous systems want that, and so much wisdom is just waiting to enter into our psyche. And yet we stay busy, so much inspiration, so much knowing of like, what is the next move in my life, or what should I do with this creative project, or everything is there waiting for us to do nothing to receive it. And yeah, once again, Mother Earth is such an incredible teacher for that. And I know your world is very much on Mother Earth in your work and your life. And I'd love to talk about that. So let's just to summarize all these ramblings, love to talk about the power of silence and stillness, and this kind of doing nothing is actually what's doing everything.
I love listening to your questions because there is such a vast well of wisdom in them, just in how you ask the question and what you ask. So thank you for that. I would love to talk about stillness and silence. One of my most favorite things to do is to gather with my sisters, all my friends, and just sit in silence. And it's amazing how much more can be said in that space. And you notice things in that space. You notice the resistance to that space, the resistance to the stillness. You notice itches suddenly come up and a hair out of place. Yesterday I had a hair in my eye. I'm practicing hold the ball. And the practice is to be okay with that. It talks to you for a while, but then it's not going to get your reaction, so it goes away and you put your awareness elsewhere. And I suppose that's where the real juice is of stillness and silence, and why it works, why doing less makes a place for you to move more. I wonder what it would be like to go inside of a tree and to exist there for a moment as a tree, and to listen as we do in qigong, listening. I listen to my body. I know what it feels like to be inside this body. And I often will go there listening as if it's the first time I've been inside this body. I've never been inside a body before. This is it. This is what it is. And that helps me lose my frame of reference. And so I think to give that gift to myself, what it is to be inside a tree and to listen to that body, because you're right. The stillness and the silence, it isn't what you think it is. There's a vast amount of movement and communication taking place underneath your resistance to it. And when you soften and you surrender, then you are able to really hear. And that's where the real power is. The real power doesn't come from all the doing, all the activity. The real power, and I'm talking about the authentic power, all sorts of words you could put on it. Your soul essence, the love that is you, the stardust that made you still exists as you. That's the kind of power I'm talking about. And that's what moves things in your world. You think, oh, I have an interview on a podcast, that's I'm doing something that's going to reach people and they're going to listen and have an idea and go and act on that idea. But really, none of that is really what's moving things. And it's something that's not the easiest thing to explain with words. Stillness and silence. It's something only you can feel into, and I suppose that's the whole that's the whole thing of practice, whatever your practice is, but especially the kinds of practices that bring you a better understanding of you and your place in the world, is giving yourself the space to hear what you already know inside. And oftentimes that wisdom, that remembering, that knowing isn't coming to you in words. It's not something you can even just write out and send to someone. Here's truth. Sometimes we get revelations like that, but most times it's not. Most times it's, I had a feeling today, and that feeling brought me back to before I was born. What can be said? What can be said about silence?
Yeah, I like that you say that. Like, it is, I find too, it's looking back often that we see the power of those moments too. Like it's hard in the moment to see the magic that's happening, to see the sparks that are connecting in our life, in our being, like just even our mind, the lights that are coming off, shining and like connecting to new vision and aspirations. But something starts to happen. There is this invisible experience where we start to plant invisible seeds into our consciousness and into our world without even, what you're saying, having the words for it. But these things are happening, and it's having some kind of faith in, I think the more we do this kind of inner practice, we have some kind of faith that even if we can't see the benefits of silence and slowing down in these ways and deep nurturement, we know from past experience that the most important things in our life have come from this. I think many of us can say that genuinely. I don't know if I'm putting words into your mouth that are untrue, but that's my experience.
Yeah, no, not at all. I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying, and that's the thing of it. The gongfu, you can't have gongfu in cooking by spending a year cooking. It comes over time, and eventually you're going to realize, hey, I'm a dang good cook. And I love it. And people love eating my food, and they feel nurtured and beautiful when they eat my food and loved. But that takes time. And so it's, I think, part of the being asked of one who approaches any kind of work like the Chinese internal arts, say, is a certain amount of discipline. And for some, discipline comes fairly easily, and I will raise my hand at that and acknowledge that it is, it is part of the reason why I can post a practice movie every single day. And for others, it's a lot more hard, more challenging to have the discipline, especially when it comes to one's personal growth and inner health. I suppose there are different ways that one might go about reaching their own inner discipline, but it's required for the work. And I live in a place that fosters it. I live away from sounds, lights, pollution of all sorts of kinds that aren't the sounds I hear are the raven's wings flapping above my head, and certainly the wind in the juniper trees, and the birds and the coyotes yipping, and just my own home sounds. And that is an absolute blessing that not a day goes by I don't feel grateful for. But I didn't always live here. I spent so many years living in a city right downtown. And even in that space, I was practicing and looking around me for nature, looking for stillness and silence in a rose that just I've been passing on the sidewalk for days and admiring. And one day it's just calling out to me, come on over, give me a whiff. And finding that peace in just that one moment, that would hold me. And I could walk through traffic and listen to people honk their horns, and just that one rose could carry me through that. It's all right. It's not touching me. It's okay. And here I think that one rose started the seed within me. Oh, I want more roses. I'm going to find my way there. And I'm here now to this place, and more roses coming to me, leading me to the next. And as it goes, right, in life, following the thread toward what will be.
In gratitude to our listeners, and to support the making of this podcast, we want to let you know that you receive 10% off our shop of botanical delights, teas, tonics, and skincare. You also receive a discount on our online course called The In-Between to support anyone moving through heartbreak or who wants to move towards future partnership from wholeness, self-awareness, and an open heart. Visit oliviaclementine.com and at checkout, enter the code LOVE and LIBERATION for a discount. Don't forget, if you like this podcast, to leave a review and rating at iTunes. Thank you again for your support. Now back to our conversation.
In terms of discipline, I love that you bring that up because it is so important. I think it's really common, the sense of like, well, I've been trying, but I just can't get to it. And I'm going to start next week. And have you always just been a disciplined person, or was it because these pathways for you were so beneficial? So that's what stoked the fire of your discipline, or what was it for you that's kept you on it every day, committed?
Yes, I've always been a disciplined person. What I've been disciplined to has shifted greatly. So just by having a great amount of natural discipline doesn't mean that things come easy. My discipline for many years was to my grief. My discipline for many years was to my own self-criticism. That's a hard place to have discipline in. I don't consider it something that, if one finds discipline more of a challenge, I don't think that you have it harder than one who has, say, easy discipline. You just have a different path to find what works for you. I give the practitioners who come to me, I give them a lot of space to find their own way through it. Mm-hmm. I tend not to push people. I'll give some gentle nudges, some encouragement. It's a thing, you know, to commit to something that's good for you is a challenge, and I'm not outside of that myself. It took time. This is part of my Tao. This is part of my path. This is part of why I'm here. So when you have those doors open, sometimes you just get washed through on the current. And that's what happened for me in this particular regard. For others coming to qigong, taiji, gongfu, it might not be part of your path. Maybe you're not supposed to go out and teach it, but it's part of what might get you to the next place where you can find that door that you need to open and let the current come flowing in. And so for people who are coming to the practice in that way, I would say a little at a time, and a little at a time regularly, not once a year or when you feel like it. If you really want to explore the practice, come to it every day for an amount of time that you decide, even if it is 5 minutes. I, gentle teacher as I am, would say even if it's a minute, there are things you can do for a minute that touch into the practice. But you decide. And so it's gentle, and you commit it, you put it on the calendar. Maybe you have a little alarm, a little ding, a little chime that goes off. Oh, now is my minute. Now is my 5 minutes. Now my 20 minutes of movement. Now my half hour of sitting. Whatever it is for you. And you can even set an amount of time as far as how many days you want to do. Just an experiment. I'm just going to see what it feels like to do this every day for 10 minutes for a month. And, you know, you can find all sorts of ways to hold yourself accountable. For a long time, I thought, oh, I'm doing the Instagram dailies, my everyday gongfu films, because I'm holding myself accountable. I have witnesses now. I kind of pretty much know, because I know myself, that I didn't need the accountability. I was practicing anyway. However, I think it helped me feel inspired about it. So there are things you can do in that regard. Hold yourself accountable, have witnesses, have people who are doing it with you. Find a class to go to, find a teacher you like. And that's the other part about it. You know, if you know you want to practice qigong, but you haven't found the right teacher, that can make a really big difference in whether or not you like it, whether or not it speaks to you.
What you were saying in the beginning, I think we can have some other idea of what gongfu means, or we might have certain ideas, but what I keep hearing is this underlying thread of compassion, right? There's this, I imagine these practices help us deepen in great compassion for ourselves, which is like resting in our own bodies. So I imagine that would really allow that compassion to flood into the world, which is so needed right now. Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We need more compassion, and the practice, my practice, is the thing that has taught me how to have self-compassion. You know, the critic will always be there for us all. Every day you'll hear that voice. And when you can hear that voice from a place of self-compassion, I had a friend who used to say, you just tell that voice to go sit in the corner. And I have a different idea of that. I I just want that voice to just sit right here next to me. Come on here. If you want to sit in my lap, come sit on my lap. And we're just going to sit here. And I'm going to say, yes, yes, I hear you. It's all right. And then I'm going to continue on with my business, and that voice will feel heard and might try to get my attention again. But I'm not saying, go away, go, you bad thing. And again, it goes back to the emotions thing. When we close the door, it just gets louder. So did I answer your question?
Yeah.
It went off.
It's great. Yeah. Like what you were just saying, like this no closing the door. It is nice that like each of us can open the amount that we need to open. We can each be who we are. Like if we have a lot of energy and emotion, like we just need to make more room for it. So there's more room for it to live and be cared for. And it is interesting being an embodied person, right? We see like we have bones and skin and we think we're a certain size, but our energy is not our body. And so we have to shift ourselves to be able to relate to that formless thing, bringing us back to the very beginning, right? Of like, how can we actually connect to who we are beyond form? And it does take a sense of self-honoring, like we honor ourselves enough that we're willing to learn how to be big enough for whoever we want to be in this lifetime and whatever we brought into this lifetime. I'm just realizing, I don't know if we actually talked about Tai Chi.
Well, it's funny that would be your next question. I just hearing you speak here in this, I have gone back to the beginning of this idea of it's all the same. So yeah, we definitely talked about that Tai Chi because it is all together. It is all the same. I do want to just say that because it's one thing, you might come to me and learn qigong and think I'm practicing qigong. But Brea says, I need Kung Fu and Tai Chi also, otherwise I'm not getting the whole, I'm just touching the surface. And let me just tell you that because it's all the same thing, at least in the way I teach it, when you learn Qigong from me, you are also learning Kung Fu because the movements of the forms, not always are martial, and that's kind of the difference. Technically, gongfu is always martial and it's more external, so you move faster and you send the energy out forcefully, powerfully, right? The power is there from the inside out. External. And then we have Tai Chi, and Tai Chi is all martial movements. They all can be sped up and have an impact, either offensive or defensive. However, we do them slowly, which is a lot harder and takes more strength. And we do them mindfully, and we do them with our awareness on the movement of the energy within me, circling outward to move my limbs and my waist and my gaze, right? Internal. That's the internal art. And then Qigong would be the medicine, taking the medicine into the body. And so now we have movements that maybe not necessarily are martial, right? Maybe I can't directly link turning the palms skyward and sweeping up the sides to over the head, earthward palms, as a direct block or a direct strike. But the body knows what that movement means, and the body knows what that movement is talking to. So you're moving this way to talk to your body and to cleanse and activate certain body parts, and that's the medicine, right? So in a lot of qigong forms, we have moments where, and some more than others, where the movements are drawing from the actual kung fu movement. eagle wings qigong, for example. The arms sweep up and cross over the head, and that is absolutely a block. But we do it very slowly to the cross, and drawing down, blocking down the front of the body. And here in qigong, whereas in gongfu, a block down with crossed arms in front of the body could be a strike. In qigong, in quotes, block down, oh so slowly, with so much attention to how it feels in the body to hold that position, draws down clarity. And we're looking in the space between the palms, and the space between the palms naturally becomes more clear, whereas the space outside of the crossed arms is less clear, it's less in focus. And so we're drawing down clarity, and so we feel that in the body. And so the movements are ancient in that they were inspired by the need, the practicality, the practical need to defend one's home and family. And we are taking the archetypes of those positions and movements that we offer to the body and ingesting them. We eat those archetypes, and we know as humans, we all know what certain archetypes mean. Mm-hmm. We know what the rose means and its thorn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wish people could see you. We're on video, so people aren't going to be able to see it, but like even just seeing you bring your arms down in that space in between, and like immediately I felt so focused and centered just from watching you do it. And
yeah, and that's the other thing. When you watch someone practice qigong who's really moving qi, you really don't need to be doing it. It's definitely better. You're going to get more benefit by doing it yourself, but that's part of the reason I offer it on Instagram, where people, not just the people who are interested in martial arts are going to find me, right? Just watching will help you soften and find space for yourself.
Being better. Everything you're sharing is like dessert.
Yay.
Well, is there anything you want to share? Anything that's on your mind lately, or what you're inspired by, or just anything?
A lot of things on mind right now. It's a hard time. For the world, I'm speaking. Me personally, I'm okay. I want to send a wish or a prayer or a beam of light, stardust out to everyone, not just those who are listening, but that you can find space within yourself to allow what's going on, and then to move behind it and listen to the stillness within you, because oftentimes we don't know what to do, and we're not going to know what to do with the things that are on the horizon, even if they may seem good, which I'm open to that. But this definitely the challenging aspects of the world in which we live. It's going to be more important and essential to be able to find the space within yourself that is calm and quiet.